Hey guys, it's Eternia here. Since no one else is doing AT prediction videos for this weekend, I thought I would try my hand at them. Predicting this AT is incredibly difficult though, as we've seen Volta, Hydra and PL all get upset in this tournament already. 3 of the big 6, as I would say. Moderator, Jintan are in Iceland. So let's talk about this weekend coming up, and there's going to be some insane matches. It's been so insane so far. The second weekend kind of felt like the third weekend, or the Saturday before the final day, in terms of skill, how much tension there is in the matches. This has been the best Alliance tournament by far. I really love these rules. It just seeing so much destruction, so many upsets. I really love how aggressive this tournament is, because it just makes things very fun. Anyway, so going into this third weekend, there's an important change that's happening, and that's it's going to be a third ban added on either side. So instead of each team having 2 bans each for a total of 4 ships banned per match, there's now going to be 3 bans each for a total of 6 ships banned per match. Now that actually changes a lot. You can now completely ban an archetype. Before, we've seen people still kind of get around ship bans by bringing Tech 2 logistic frigates. We've also seen, for example, with drones, we've seen ship replacements, where let's say you ban EOS Ishtar. Okay, we're going to swap our Ishtars for Stradioses. We're maybe going to downgrade, one of the Myrmidons to, one of the EOSes to a Myrmidon. Maybe we'll upgrade the other Myrmidon to a Armageddon, and we're going to bring, Magus for the other link ship and 2 Maguses instead of Vexes. We've seen people sort of play around with ship points like that. With 3 vans though, I think you can almost completely shut out an archetype, being able to just say, EOS, Vex and AV issue, Ishtar, deal with it. It's much harder to get around that, I think. So that'd be interesting. Also against sort of the we should say teams that have access to Rabisus and Atanas, you can now completely ban them out of certain ship type, assuming Tech 2 logistic cruisers. So, instead of just banning Rabisu and Nereus against PL, you could now ban Rabisu and Nereus Guardian, and force them to bring Tech 2 logistic frigates if they want to run armor, or they're forced into shield. So, and also, just the fact that 2 more bans just makes such a huge deal, in terms of replacements, in terms of what comes here available. I think this might hurt a lot of the mid-tier execution teams quite a bit. Teams that just are used to okay, these are the 3 archetypes. We've just been insanely practicing them. Whatever one doesn't get banned, we're bringing it. And, we just practice so much, we're good pilots, we're just going to execute 100%. Those kind of teams. So it's sort of maybe Rogue Capel, for example, or how is that going to affect them? I think that the third ban hurts them a lot more than, say, teams let's say, Hydra and PL, who have, very long history, backlog, insane backlog of setups from previous ATs, a lot more theory crafting focus. Maybe it's going to make a lot more of those. I think it ends up being better for teams like PL Hydra, and maybe hurts those execution teams a bit more, because it's a lot easier to take those execution teams out of their comfort zone, out of where they practiced everything. Also, coming into the third weekend, we also have a very other important aspect, and that's the top 16 seeding. Currently, there are 24 teams left in the tournament. Obviously, the top 16 are the teams that get invited back for AT16 whenever that happens, if it happens, without having to go through the feeder rounds, which are insanely brutal. I definitely don't want to play in the feeder rounds myself. Being a pilot on Hydra Reloaded, which was one of the tournament favorite teams until we lost to Templars, of course. But it's like a bunch of best of ones. First of all, you have to waste time practicing for it and testing for it when you could just be scrimming instead, and also just having to have that day on the calendar where you have to sacrifice potentially double weekends. It gives you a lot more peace of mind just being seeded into the tournament, and then you don't have to buy in. Obviously, Hydra Reloaded bought in this year, Brave Collective bought in this year with an insane amount of ISK. Just having that seeded spot is a pretty huge advantage. You also guarantee that you're not going to play PL Game 1. You know, if you get seeded into the top 16, because I believe they get seeded sort of equally throughout the different brackets. So, you know, if you get seeded, you're probably more likely to not die to the Tuskers on the first day, you know, poor Red Alliance. And you also get the extra 5 plex, you know, 8 billion ISK. I don't think most teams really give a shit about the 8 billion ISK, but you know, who knows, for some of these, for some of the maybe more unknown teams, you know, maybe Bright Side of Death, you know, like a team like that, you know, maybe the 8 billion ISK, it means the difference between, you know, losing ISK and, you know, breaking even winning ISK, especially when you consider the value of the ATXV victory skins that will also be rewarded later after the tournament concludes, so 10 for each match you've won. So I would like to just take a look at these brackets, because they're actually insane. Like, if you take a look at the bottom half of the bracket here, got the Initiative and Penizal and Banapart and Laserhawks it's still in the winners here. Now, whatever happens, let's just say that, you know, this tournament upsets just suddenly decides to be normal, and Pandemic Legion and the Tuskers just win every single game until the finals, and then the finals Tuskers versus PL again. Even if that happens, the Initiative, Penizal, Banapart, Laserhawks, one of them is going to come in third place, guaranteed. Doesn't matter what happens in this tournament from now on, one of those teams is in the losers final, which means that they're going to win 7 unique prize ships, a completely unknown team. That is insane. You know, even if a team, let's just say Banapart, you know, let's just say they win this match, you know, and then they just get, you know, completely annihilated by Tuskers PL. They're in third place. It's really interesting, actually, just if you contrast this to the top side of the bracket, where everything's gone entirely as predicted, where we've got Tuskers Hydra and Northern Coalition Exodus. You know, the 4 favourites from this half of the bracket are here. There hasn't really been that many upsets in this side of the bracket, I think. The only one that, not really, like Test vs Ronin, maybe, but not really. There hasn't really been any upsets on this side of the tournament, which is pretty interesting. So going back to the schedule here, so the first half, these matches, like I said, are pretty important because you want to get that top 16 for that guaranteed seeded place. Don't need to buy in, don't need to fight through the feeder rounds, especially for some of these more unknown teams. You know, I know Rogue Capel had to go through the losers bracket of the feeder rounds, and that was probably pretty stressful for them. The same with Shadow Cartel, actually. So getting that top 16 seed would probably do a lot for them. So let's talk a bit about the matches here, I guess. There's actually going to be so many insane matches on the Sunday. But first of all, the Ronin versus Snuffed Out. I actually think this is a pretty equal matchup. The Ronin have just always been a strong AT team. They did lose to Test, and Snuffed Out, I believe, lost to Northern Coalition, if I'm not mistaken. You can't blame them for losing to Northern Coalition, because, you know, Northern Coalition being, you know, one of the favourite teams and, you know, top 8 team from Alliance Tournament 14. Snuffed Out, you know, they've actually beaten Whole Control, which I considered a pretty decent team. They beat Project Mayhem, which, you know, again, pretty decent team. Rogue Capel also beat Fraternity, which was a decent team. You know, they lost to Exodus, so again, you know, both Snuffed Out and Rogue Capel losing to those, you know, tournament favourite teams, but still, you know, eliminating some of the you know, I'd say, like, the solid mid-tier teams. So I think this match could be pretty interesting. Oh, I don't know why I'm talking about Rogue Capel when we're talking about the Ronin, but again, that, you know, the Ronin. This is the problem with doing these things live. The Ronin, they beat Waffles, they beat Goonswarm. They lost the Test. And who did they beat on day 1? Was it Skill Yourself that they beat on day 1? Yeah, they beat Skill Yourself, which is a team that's still in the tournament. They've been fighting through the losers bracket. So I don't know, maybe the Ronin hasn't been as tested as Snuffed Out, but I think, you know, the Ronin just has that history. And the Ronin's a very difficult team to ban out, I think. They're kind of weird. They've always bought logistic frigates, I believe. Even, I'm not sure if they've bought logistic frigates in every single match, but they've always bought logistic frigates, even when there's been no Tech 2 cruiser bans in the entire match whatsoever. So I think the Ronin are a team that's a lot of difficult to ban. They're kind of like the Hum Reloaded team, where, you know, you don't really know what they're doing because they just like scrim with other people that you don't know what are doing, and so you have no intel on them, and then because of that they end up like causing bringing upsets against, you know, Hydra or PL, and that kind of team. It'd be interesting to see if Snuffed Out can win. I definitely think Snuffed Out are a strong team this year. The Ronin, again, you know, they lost to Test, but I don't think there's much shame in losing to Test, because, you know, again, Test are a solid mid-tier team. Skill Yourself versus Rogue Cartel. This is a very interesting match because the team captains hate each other. Lacko and... oh, not Lacko, sorry, I'm thinking of a different team. Capku and Bambuli have a lot of drama and history between each other. So this is going to be a pretty funny Grudge match. I talked about Rogue Cartel earlier. You know, Rogue Cartel, again, very strong team. They did survive the loser bracket in the feeder rounds. They lost their first round to Hold Control, but Hold Control were a really strong team this year. Even though they've been eliminated, they were really impressive, I think. You know, seeing them take that match against Rogue, seeing them go through the... through a few other mid-tier teams, I was pretty impressed by Hold Control. Skill Yourself, I believe they lost their first match to the Ronin, as mentioned. But otherwise, you know, they've been creeping through the lower bracket. I think Skill Yourself is maybe less proven than Rogue Cartel, but again, I think it'll be a really good matchup. Thermodynamics versus Brave Collective. The amount of you know, salt that I guess is going to come from the Thermodynamics side if Brave beat them. It's going to be pretty funny. You know, all the like Chester ship posting, that the you know, feather this sort of Brave have been really strong this year. You know, jokes aside, Brave had beat Spectre Fleet. They beat Goon Swarm too, and you know, Goon Swarm, you know, didn't have the best execution, but they certainly had, you know, decent fits, a decent grasp on the meta. They bought drones. I guess, you know, if you have Asher as like the only good person in your team and you just assign drones to him, maybe that works. It worked for TNT in Alliance Tournament 13 when they just anchored up on one guy, right? So, you know, joking aside, Brave Collective have looked really strong this year. They lost to the Tuskers, no shame in that, and they kind of, I think they demolished, you know, Spectre Fleet and Goon Swarm. Like they've looked really strong. Thermodynamics, on the other hand, you know, on this side of the bracket, beat Wrecking Maternal. They lost to Exodus, you know, no real shame in that. Exodus are, again, you know, a team I expect to see in the top 4. One of the strongest execution teams, you know, very similar to the Tuskers, I'd say, in that regard. Exodus have mostly just been, you know, cleaning up people with superior piloting this entire tournament. So, you know, them losing to Exodus is, you know, not a stain. They beat Fraternity too, which... again, Fraternity, very strong mid-tier team. I believe they were top 16, top 8 last year. One of the seeded teams. And Fraternity actually knocked out quite a few mid-tier teams last year. They also beat Fraternity also beat Hold Control, which again, you know, strong team. So Thermodynamics beating them by proxy. Otherwise, you know, Thermodynamics beats of Soundbind, a bit of a weird team. So, you know, this is going to be a pretty good matchup, I think. You know, Thermodynamics, you know, that sort of core of good piloting versus Brave Collective, which also have been executing pretty well. Should be noted that Brave Collective do not have a flagship. Thermodynamics do have access to a flagship, Armageddon, if I'm mistaken. They may have lost it against Exodus, I'm not sure. I can't remember correctly. I remember them losing an Armageddon at some point, but I'm not sure if it was a flagship or not. Either way, Brave don't have a flagship, and that might, you know, that might give Thermodynamics a few advantages when it comes to the banning phase, especially now that you've got 3 bans. can completely shut them out of the NBC core that Brave Collective have shown that they're good at bringing, even with the Tech 2 Balgon. So again, it's so hard to call these matches. Shadow Cartel versus Test Alliance, please ignore. Shadow Cartel, you know, I would really like to see them beat Test, because Shadow Cartel, I really want to see them redeem themselves as the Dark Horse team. Like Shadow Cartel and AT12 and AT13 were a very strong team. A team that, you know, especially, you know, they were one of the teams when spying was still in the... when you could still spy. They were one of the teams that were on Hydra's map, you know, and back then there was like 7 teams that we actually cared about. You know, like spying on in AT13 that we cared enough about to spy on, and Shadow Cartel was one of those teams. And Shadow Cartel in AT12, they came very close to knocking PL into the losers bracket. There was a really insane match actually. If you want to go back and watch Shadow Cartel versus PL in AT12, there's a match where PL boundary violates with their 2 logistic frigates. But then, at the end of the match, they just keep trading. Gobbin's Eos dies 2 seconds after the match is called, and that would have won Shadow Cartel the match. But Shadow Cartel boundary violates with a heretic. If they didn't boundary violate with that heretic, or, you know, they did something a bit different, they would have... They came so close to knocking PL into the losers bracket. It's a game where, like, a bunch of mistakes happen, and it's, like, a really tense match. Like you know, if you're in PL, you're like, oh shit, you know. Like I was on like TeamSpeak with a PL guy during the match, and he was like so stressed out. It's a really fun match. Also, Shadow Cartel in AT13 again. They came up against PL and they killed PL's Atana. They came pretty close to knocking them out too. PL bought a like distributed Atana turtle. Tinker Turtle thing. So yeah, you know, Shadow Cartel, you know, has that history of being that team that's really scary to the bigger teams because they have the potential for the upset. And against Test are sort of the gatekeeper team. They've looked pretty strong this tournament too. You know, they lost to Hydra. No shame in that though. You know, Hydra's, you know, a team I'd put in the top 6. But by top 6, I mean, you know, this is my top 6, okay? You got PL, Hydra, the Tuskers, Exodus, Northern Coalition, and Hydra. I think those are the... If you told me any of those 6 teams won ATXV, you know, I'd say, okay, yeah. I believe you. Because, you know, I think those are probably the best teams. But, yeah, so, you know, Test beat the Ronin, which is a pretty strong team. Shadow Cartel will also beat... Project Mayhem. So, you know, going back to Shadow Cartel, they're a team that have done really poorly in AT14. They went 0-2, and then Shadow Cartel lost their first round in lost the first game in the feeder rounds against Asteria Concord, which, you know, again, a relative unknown team. So I sort of wrote Shadow Cartel off as being, you know, oh shit, you know, they're just gone, you know. But they fought their way through the feeder round losers bracket, which, you know, is no small feat. I have to give it credit for that. They've also, you know, they have made kind of a comeback, and I'd really like to see them redeem themselves. And since Test Alliance has always had that reputation of being the gatekeeper, you know, if you can beat Test, you're qualified to be, you know, in the top 8, in my opinion. And that seems as like I really hope Shadow Cartel can pull it off. Again, you know, they lost the first match, but then they kind of redeemed themselves a little bit. We'll see what happens. You know, again, you know, another really good match. Bastard Cartel versus Wingform Volta. Volta, I mean, Volta lost to Band Apart, but I honestly don't think there's any shame in that. Band Apart been really putting in work these last 2 ATs. You know, I don't think maybe they're not as strong on the Fury Crafting side, which is where these triple bans are maybe gonna be where the demise is against these bigger teams. But, you know, getting that upset against WeForm Volta. WeForm Volta, I don't think they've been tested too much this time. I mean, okay, they beat Purple Helmet Warriors, which is, you know, a good team. But, you know, United Legion, maybe not a good team. They enter the tournament every year, and they always... I really want to see Quebec United Legion make it into the top 16 at some point, because I believe they've been playing ever since like AT11, and that they've always been a team that kind of just, you know, takes a win or two and then just dies before the third weekend or the top 16 weekend. So it'd be interesting to see them. Now, the Barca Cartel, I haven't actually been paying too much attention to them this tournament, unfortunately. So they lost against the Mercenary Coalition. I think that's pretty fair. MC looked pretty solid this tournament. They beat the Culture. They beat United Federation of Conifers. That was actually a match I think me and Apophany really raged so hard at, because Conifers will like just blast the Megatrons and Barca Cartel just clicked approach, but they killed Ghost Legion, and that was actually one of the most insane matches of this tournament. Actually, I believe that's where the match where it looked like Ghost Legion were winning, and then just in the last like 2 minutes, the Barca Cartel just starts killing ships. And then, you know, like there's that Harbinger that was in like 13% hull, just holding on until the time they hit 0. That was a pretty one of the best matches of the AT, I'd say. But the Barca Cartel, you know, I don't think they're that impressive this tournament. I think they maybe fluked it. You know, it didn't look convincing against Ghost Legion, which are a good team, but Conifers, the Culture. Probably not the best teams in this tournament, and losing to MC, you know, I don't think that's that bad. You know, MC have done exceedingly well in this tournament. Actually, they're in the losers bracket, but they beat PFR, one of the favorite teams, and they looked really convincing when they did it. So I wouldn't say that there's shame in losing to the Mercenary Coalition, but you know, the Barca Cartel haven't really. They haven't shown dominance yet, I would say. If they can beat Volta, then they're suddenly just going to be on the map. I really hope they can pull it off, but I think Starfleet Commander and his family is probably pretty happy that he has the Barca Cartel. You know, out of these matches, I think Volta probably have the easiest one here. But I would very much like to be proven wrong. Please make YouTube videos of me. Like Slice. Just getting predictions wrong. Anyway, Mercenary Coalition versus Bright Side of Death. Like I just mentioned before, Mercenary Coalition, they knocked out PFR. One of the favourite teams. You know, maybe not the top, like the 6 that I mentioned. But they're there, you know. Like if PFR came in 3rd or 4th place in the Alliance Tournament, I would not be surprised. And they looked pretty convincing when they won. So it'd be an interesting game. Who did Mercenary Coalition lose to? Mercenary Coalition lost to the Bastard Cartel. Oh no, they beat the Bastard Cartel. Sorry, I'm dumb. They lost to the Initiative again. Initiative beat PL. So God, there's so many good mid-tier teams here. So yeah, MC, you know, versus Bright Side of Death. MC, you know, they beat PFR, so I think they can probably beat Bright Side of Death. Bright Side of Death lost the Laserhawks. They beat No Handlebars. They beat Castabouts. So here, maybe they haven't had time to prove themselves. Laserhawk are pretty strong. You know, they're in the winners bracket. Hard to call, I think. Hard to call. They haven't beat any good teams. Losing to Laserhawks, though, isn't really a stain on their reputation. So again, you know, 2 teams that need to prove themselves. Interesting match. Slice versus PL. So Slice have been really surprising in this tournament. They're a team that... I think they're a team that can maybe pull an upset against PL if they just bring something a bit weird and PL make a mistake. Like the strength of Slice, I think, is the fact that they're willing to go out of the box a bit while still being competent. In AT14, Slice brought the the snapshot heavy interdictor, you know, where you heat you bring a 500 mm Hick, you heat the MWD, then you immediately hit the bubble, and then you get the huge mass reduction, but the thrust penalty to the microwarp drive doesn't happen till the end of the first cycle. So essentially, you have a hick that goes at the same speed as an interceptor for the first 2 seconds of the match. It's kind of like a weird, like, I would call it the ghetto Balgon, where you just like send this huge tanky ship, immediately propel itself like across the arena and scram a key ship, you know, like a curse or the logistics. They also brought whole tanked Vindicators and Balgons against for their match against Templars. Again, Templars are a good team because they knocked out didn't knock out. They put Hydra into the losers bracket. So you know, Slice are a weird team. PL, you know, PL, they're just, you know, strong. Pandemic Legion. They did lose to the Initiative though. So, you know, if this was a best of 3, I'd say, you know, 2-1 to PL probably. So I think this is one of the few upsets that I think, you know, if we look at these teams, We from Volta, Pandemic Legion, and Hydra Reloaded, if you tell me there was an upset, you came back in time from the Saturday and you tell me there's an upset, guess which one it was. The one that I'd say is most likely to happen is probably Slice versus PL. I'm kind of in a weird position being on the Hydra team where I really hope it happens, like Slice versus PL, because it would be like an insane upset and it would be really good for the tournament, insane. But I also just want to see like Hydra versus PL in the losers bracket, best of 1, just because I know it's probably gonna be like if it isn't double unique on like a unique on either side, a slaughter where like hopefully both uniques die, I'm probably gonna be disappointed. I really want to play in that match too. I really want to just play against PL and just like have one of us just have like a huge bloody nose and just be like an insane fight. But yeah, this is probably the most likely upset, I would say. You know, Slice also had that, you know, like insane Harbinger and MJU play earlier on in the bracket, which was also really fun to watch. So I mean, if any of these upsets are most likely to happen, I'd probably say it's Slice versus PL. Hydra versus Salt Farmers. So you know, Hydra lost their first game against Templars, who were, you know, just a very strong mid-tier team, you know, probably the same level as the Ronin, to be honest with you. And we lost to the Ronin in AT12. So, you know, we beat Hard Knocks and we beat Quebec United Legions. You know, Hard Knocks, you know, a bit shaky, maybe. I think Hydra are sort of a team that need to prove themselves still. Losing to Templars, but then cleaning up, maybe a solid, like Hard Knocks are, you know, pretty solid, but I wouldn't say they're a team that you would put, like if you had an Alliance tournament resume and you could list, you know, your best match in the tournament, I'm not sure you'd be too proud of putting, you know, Hydra versus Hard Knocks on that resume. So Hydra still need to prove themselves. I think the same with PL actually, you know. PL haven't really beat any good teams this year either, so the lower bracket is such a mess. Salt Farmers, on the other hand, they're a bit weird. They really like to bring turtle setups, or, you know, like no prop logistics with, like, supported by energy transfer ships, even when it doesn't really make sense for them to do it, like in armor. Like, and I know they had like a really weird like no prop Guardian. I'll see if I can find it quickly, just because I think it's pretty interesting. They've brought a lot of weird stuff in this tournament. I should have probably disabled notifications before recording. the feel of doing this live. Okay, is this it? Yeah. So they bought this with like really weird, like, you know, they've been bringing like really weird, like no prop logistics setups. They also bought like a no prop basilisk, you know, same sort of thing. They really like these no prop logistics. This is a double 1600 plate guardian. Like, it's almost like a bait guardian in a way. So, you know, they're a bit weird. They like to do kind of weird stuff, sort of like Slice T. So, I mean, like, I think there's the potential that maybe Salt brings something really weird and beat Hydra, but I think it's probably less likely than Slice. Salt Farmers, again, you know, this lower bracket's been a bit weird. Let's see who they've beaten so far. So Salt Farmers beat Solar Fleet, they beat Conifers, they lost to Penazelt. You know, again, you know, haven't really proven themselves, but they're kind of like Slice, but I think Slice have proven a lot more than Salt Farmers have. So it'll be interesting. So we're moving into the winners brackets now, and all of these matches are so good. Like, there's no terrible teams left in the tournament, which is good. Or not even terrible. Like, I'd say, you know, inconsistent mid-tier teams. There's none of them left, which is insane. So Tuskers versus Hydra. Oh yeah, the fact that this is the best of one as well is, oh, I can see the upset happening. So you know, the Tuskers, you know, very solid. You know, End of Life and Red Alliance, maybe not the best two teams, but the Tuskers just shown like pure dominance. You know, they just bought archetypal setups. They haven't shown anything. And they've just flown them to almost perfection. You know, if you go back and watch the Tuskers versus Red Alliance team, you know, just the way they split up, like, it's just so good. You know, the piloting is so good in it. The same with End of Life. You know, the Tuskers have always just looked like they're just like the peak of an execution team. You know, beating Brave Collective too. You know, Brave Collective, a solid mid-tier team. Hydra beat Test. They beat Outside Backstabbers, which was just a free game. So the Tuskers are not invincible. If we talk about AT14, the Tuskers lost a game in all of their best of 3 sets. So that they I believe they dropped 2 games versus PL. I believe they won 1 and dropped 2 for the winners semi-final. And then they dropped into the losers final, where they lost a game to Hydra. No, not Hydra, we formed Volta, but they otherwise won. And then we went into the winners bracket, where they still dropped a game versus PL. So the Tuskers aren't invincible. Like, dropping game to Volta, dropping game to PL. I could see this happening. Like, if this were a best of 3, I would probably call it 2-1 to the Tuskers, just because I think Hydra have looked a bit shaky. They're our practice partners, and I love Hydra, even though I don't really understand them too well. But you know, they actually boundary validated with 2 ships in one of their matches, and maybe, you know, they probably don't have that peak of, you know, pilot performance, you know, the dominance that the Tuskers have had. Even though they have still won their matches pretty convincingly, you know, just the 2 boundary violations just makes me feel a bit shaky. So if this was a best of 3, I'd call it 2-1 in the favour of the Tuskers, but because it's a best of 1, and you know, Hydra are also a team. Like, Tuskers are, you know, they just play everything straight. Even in AT14, they never really bought any. You know, they've never really shown they've never really thrown a wench in the works in terms of theory crafting. Unlike, you know, other teams, let's just say like PL and Hydra in, you know, AT11, AT12, you know, the Camo Empire, there's always been like that one setup where you just bring it, you know, it's like, you know, bringing out your big dick and putting it on the table, you know, just like, deal with this, you know, and it just completely changes the meta. The Tuskers haven't done that. And Hydra in AT14, they were running really weird stuff. Like, they were running like double curse setups. They were running double marauder setups. So I think this kind of like, I think if it's a straight match, like, I think if it's just the Tuskers bring exactly the same as Hydra, I think the Tuskers will win. because I just think they are the peak of an execution team. But if Hydra have access to something a bit weird, and the Tuskers can't really deal with it, then I could see Hydra taking this. Again, this is, even though the Tuskers are the previous Alliance Tournament winner, I think Hydra could take a game off of them. So hard to call. I would say it's about 65% in the Tuskers' favour, maybe 35% Hydra. But it's definitely something that could happen. Although, it's not really an upset, though. Again, Hydra is in the top 6, I'd say. Moving down to Northern Coalition versus Exodus. This is kind of... Exodus, again, are very similar to the Tuskers in the fact that they're just a team that just have the best execution. Exodus have always been a team where, they don't really... Again, they don't really have any weird stuff. Any weird theory crafting. They just tend to play the normal archetypal stuff that you would expect to see. But they just play it like 100% perfectly. NC. They do have, DHP, who, has that, treasure trove of uniques. I think Northern Coalition are probably going to bring a unique in this match against Exodus. And I really hope that, it dies, because uniques dying is fun. And NC. Again, another really solid team. X Nali Secunda, which claimed 3rd place in... Oh, sorry, it was a 2nd place in AT12. Yeah. So, Nali Secunda, definitely, sort of the remnants of that. So, yeah, again, another remnants of Hun Reloaded. Strong teams. I think Northern Coalition maybe have a bit of an edge on theory crafting over Exodus, but I think Exodus have the edge when it comes to just being that team that just goes out on the field and just, that setup that they practiced, 80 times, they just fly it 100% perfectly. Again, another really interesting match, and quite interestingly as well, whoever loses this match between Northern Coalition and Exodus has to play Hydra or PL or Slice or Salt Farmers, if the upset happens. Oh, man, it's going to be so insane this Sunday coming up. Initiative versus Penazel. Initiative beat PL, so I have to say that, that they are really good. Initiative have actually looked really solid this year. I'm told that they have like a core that are really good. I mean, they beat Culture. They beat Mercenary Coalition too. Again, I think Mercenary Coalition are pretty good. And they beat PL, so they look really solid. Penazel beat Ghost Legion. So again, Penazel, bit unknown, a bit weird. I really didn't expect them to be in the tournament at this point, because I just remember like Rapid Withdrawal being like, the average blobbing, like FW corporation, which makes up the majority of Penazel. But they have proven me wrong. Beating Ghost Legion is no mean feat, and they also beat Salt Farmers too. Not sure. Salt Farmers, again, that weird team that I talked about that like to bring the the like weird overtank logi, or even bait logi, energy transfer kind of comps. That sort of like weird tinker stuff. So that could be a pretty interesting match. I think the Initiative has the edge here. But, Penazel could win. I'd really like to see the Initiative win. Unfortunately, there is not a timeline where PL plays Initiative unless PL beat Hydra, beat the loser of NC. and Exodus, and then beat Initiative, I think, like 2 games after. As much as I like to see that timeline, I don't think it's going to happen. And then Abandonpart versus Laserhawks. Abandonpart, it looks so strong this year, but so have Laserhawks. Both of these teams, Abandonpart, kind of the story of AT14, I'd say, knocking out 2 good teams, but then dying to I think they lost to PL, and then they lost to Villa Accords. Is that right? I'm not sure. I know they definitely beat 2 low-sec teams. They're kind of like the low-sec slayers of Alliance 14. This year they've looked pretty strong. You know, they got the upset versus Reform Volta. They also beat Hard Knock Citizens. Again, you know, maybe not a team you put on your tournament resume, but still, you know, pretty solid team. And the Bonaparte also beat Slice. Again, a team that upset... Slice beat PFR, I think. Oh no, that was the Mercenary Coalition. Oh no, Slice beat Templars. And they've also looked pretty... They look pretty strong without Harbinger playing, so... Man. What a tournament this has been. So we had the Laserhawks. Laserhawks look pretty solid. They beat Templars. They beat Bright Side of Death. Bright Side of Death is still in the tournament, and they also beat Pasty. So beating Pasty and Templars, I think Laserhawks are really solid. The Bonaparte also really solid. Oh man, what an insane game! That's going to be a really hard match to call too. Let's move on to tomorrow. Now it looks pretty shit in here. You can't really tell. So what I'm gonna do is so interestingly, so let's say PL and Hydra win. I'll put them in pink. Then we got PL versus Hydra in this game, but then the loser of NC Exodus comes down here and then plays in this game. So this is 1-1, 1-1-2, 1-1-6. If we just go back to the schedule quickly, you'll see 1-1-2. So we're going to see PL versus Hydra, potentially. I mean, as long as Slice and Soulformers don't get an upset at 1600, and then less than 2 hours later, PL or Hydra, or versus the loser of Exodus and Cedar. We're going to say goodbye to at least 2 of the top 6 in already. So let's just say PL win, because I'm completely unbiased. Then, we're going to say goodbye to Hydra and potentially Exodus or NC. That's pretty insane. So I think that's probably the bracket everyone's sort of looking forward to. But looking at these other brackets up here. So we have the Ronin versus Snuffed Out. This is a really hard match to call, and whoever wins out of this match then plays the winner of Rogue Capel and Skill Yourself. And then they play this bracket. I think the brackets are opposite, right? So I think the loser of Hydra Tuskers drops down to this one. The loser of Bandapar and Laserhawks is this one, I think. And then this is Pen is Out versus the Initiative. So some pretty insane matches coming up. This one, again, pretty fun match. Just because it's Bambuli versus Kakyu. If Test win, Test versus Brave could actually be a pretty interesting game too. So like the battle of, brand new bros versus Brave Collective could be pretty funny. Even though those teams, like the players from brand new bros aren't actually playing, but sort of just like as a old Hero Coalition grudge match. Again, if Shadow Cartel beat Test, I'd feel like Shadow Cartel have redeemed themselves. And they're sort of becoming the dark horse, almost killing PL team that they were in 8013 and 8012. Thermodynamics also a team I think that very much wants to prove itself. I could see Thermodynamics winning this game. And then maybe beating Test or Shadow Cartel and then just proving themselves by coming up here. And then maybe playing, I believe it's the Initiative in that bracket. The Initiative or Pen is Out. And yeah, like that. I think every team in here could potentially, get to this point at least. All of these brackets are like so good. Again, same for this too. Like I can see any of these teams, Skills have Rookapel, Ronin Stuffed Out, making it all the way down to here. And then, playing this team and then maybe even getting an upset and moving into there. Oh man, this tournament is so insane. You know, we form Volta. You know, probably got the easiest bracket, I'd say, out of the big four here. The Muscatel relatively unproven. No, Price of Death relatively unproven. MC, I think, probably the stronger team. But I'd say Volta probably win this, and I think they play. Well, they do have to play the loser of. Oh no, this is Hydra versus Tuskers, right? Like, this one is X's. This is Hydra versus Tuskers, so this one should be. Is this Laser Hawks versus Hydra? I'm confused. Anyway. So I assume these guys would play the Hydra versus Tuskers loser. So again, oh man, it's gonna be probably an insane match coming on here later tonight. Let me just double check that. Okay, let me get rid of this stuff on the screen. So let's say Hydra win. Where are Hydra? Volta, sorry. Volta beat Bastard Cartel. That's winner of 101. And then they play winner of 102, which we know will be probably MC Dot or Brightside. Well, Brightside of Death or MC Dot. Probably MC Dot. So that would be Volta versus MC Dot. And so they would play the loser of Series 105. And 105 is Tuskers. Yeah, so it's Tuskers versus Hydra. They play the losers of. Oh, that's gonna be an insane game. We're gonna see. So we're actually gonna see three of the top 6 go out this weekend. This is gonna be a brutal Sunday. So we're definitely like Hydra or PL definitely gone by this Sunday, which is pretty insane. But then also we could potentially see either Exodus or NC Dot could go. The winner of Hydra vs PL could also go, but also Volta or the loser of Hydra Tuskers is going too. Oh, three good teams are going just this weekend. I'm really excited. So you know, those are kind of my predictions. Like, they're very hard to call, honestly. If I just focus on the winners bracket, Tuskers probably. I really don't know who to call between Northern Coalition and Exodus. I kind of would like to see Exodus win, just so we can see like Tuskers versus Exodus, because then that would be kind of like the peak of piloting, sort of, you know, like two high-end execution teams just clashing together. I don't think Exodus and Tuskers have ever actually played each other. I don't think they played each other in 80. They didn't play each other in 80-14. I don't think they played each other in 80-13 either, because Tuskers were in our bracket and Exodus were in the upper bracket. So, you know, I'd really like to see Tuskers versus Exodus just to prove, you know, who's the best execution team. That would be a good kind of grudge match. And of course, the winner of that would then, you know, guaranteed third place. Oh man, it's such an insane tournament. I'm lost for words, just like how epic this tournament is. This is just my rant tournament video. I hope you liked it.